Will Leach, what are you doing?
Oh, I'm trying to organize my desk. I don't want you seeing what's behind me. I felt awkward, so I'm cleaning up my desk and just preparing mentally and physically for the conversation you and I are about to have. You can never be too prepared, Steve.
So here we are live streaming, and Will's cleaning up his office. Will, welcome to the Mindstate Marketing Hour.
Now I'm ready. I'm happy to be here today with you and with everybody out there who's joining us. Very happy to be here.
So these are fun, enlightening conversations we have with Will Leach. He's the author of Marketing to Mindstate. How to use science to connect with your clients. There's the book over there. And so I don't know how many we've had of these, but these are some of my favorite conversations, Will. And so today you wanted to talk about how to build loyalty, how brands can build loyalty. Fill us in a little bit about, do the setup, do the backstory.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Give us some backstory. And then
I always got it. So I think a lot. I do. I do a lot of thinking. And some of the backstory actually is last week, a survey came out, of the results of a survey from Supermarket News. It came out on December 1st, and it talked about how much switching there is in the marketplace today. How many people are switching from brands that they've been loyal to forever and switching. And some of these stats are crazy. So for context, about 1,000 people were surveyed, and that is a large sample size, guys. That's a massive amount of sample. Random shoppers across the US, and it said some crazy stuff like 62% of people have switched to cheaper brands. 62% of people have already switched to cheaper brands given post-COVID. 71% of people are actively shopping for new items. And 83% of people say that once they bought that new item, they're saying they're going to buy that again. And, I have lots of friends in the CPG world, and guys, like growing or creating iconic brands in grocery stores. Like you have 100-year-old heritage brands all the time. And these people I'm talking to are saying like penetration is going down. We had people that were buying our brands forever, and all of a sudden they're leaving. What is going on with loyalty? Because they've been trying to design this kind of create this loyalty with customers forever. And it just dawned on me. I started thinking about loyalty and what is, it's easy for us to say, oh, I want to build loyalty and connection. But I started thinking, what is the science behind that? And it's not surprising. I'm not a huge believer in loyalty, especially when you see metrics like I just told you today. Massive amount of switching right now.
And I'm not coming from this world, but I talked about this story in my book, The Golden Toilet. But when a woman becomes pregnant, her brand loyalty changes because certain smells don't appeal to her anymore. There's all these things going on, and that is a beautiful time for a new brand to step in and earn her business for the next 20 years or however long that opportunity is. And so it's very interesting. I would imagine that in a COVID event like this, even though maybe it's unprecedented for us as an experience, but I bet there's a lot of data on how people reevaluate the staples that they put in their shelves during times when things are up in the air, when maybe they don't feel the same.
You just nailed the exact point I was going to make. Loyalty is easy when times are okay or good, because loyalty is really habit. I mean, and we'll define what I mean by loyalty, because I think there's two types of loyalty. And I'm by no means a loyalty expert, but I do understand how the mind works. And I can relate some of these principles of loyalty that I've read about to science. But what we perceive many times as loyalty was really just a habit. That's really what it was. And habits get changed quite dramatically when things are so up in the air, like you called them. And that's what's happened, right?
Wow, I love that. So sometimes what we perceive as loyalty is really just a habit.
Yeah.
And that can be like disrupted very easily.
Very easily. It's so funny because when you look at data, and these big companies have lots of data, they will see, look, no, wait, I see that these customers are coming again and again. They must love me. No, here's what's happening. I think about loyalty, and this was taught to me by a former boss of mine, or this concept anyways, and that there's like kind of two types of loyalty. There's transactional loyalty, and then there's emotional loyalty. And you can't really tell the difference when you're just looking at data. So transactional loyalty is this, and he described it like this. So I used to work at Frito-Lay, and we had a campus, right? So in the campus, they had a cafeteria that you'd go to, eat your lunch. If you wanted breakfast, you'd go there for breakfast as well. So if you looked at my data, if you were able to track my purchases, you would say, my gosh, he's very loyal to that cafeteria. He must really like the food there or whatever. Because we have restaurants not too far away. But was that loyalty, or was frankly that's my only choice because I have a half hour, and for the time it gets me, for lunch. So by the time it gets me to leave my desk, to get in my car, to drive somewhere, my half hour is gone. So you would look at my data and think to yourself, oh man, Will's really loyal to this cafe. And though I wasn't at all, I wasn't bad, but it certainly wasn't good. I think sometimes we have looked at our behavioral data and thought of, our customers are loyal at an emotional level. But really what it was a very transactional thing. It was a habit. It was like, it was downstairs and it was easy. The second one would be emotional loyalty. And that's the one I think most of us strive for. We build brands that establish meaning and connection. I don't disagree. That's not important. But the problem is, just like you just said, buddy, that when times in our lives shift, like I'm having a baby, or like, the smells are different, that the experiences you're looking for are very different, or in times of a lot of stress, we change and we're not, the things that connected us to a brand at one point are no longer salient. They're no longer important. That's, I think, the issue with loyalty is I think loyalty is dead. I don't believe in loyalty at all anymore. I believe in something called attachment. And there's a lot of behavioral science around the impact of building an attachment with a brand that goes way beyond what we would consider loyalty.
So when you say attachment, what does that mean? Is it like this psychological attachment, or I'm thinking of codependency, but what's the difference here?
Yeah. Well, hopefully that does it. But you know what? It is kind of like this. I think that attachment is a much deeper form of connection with people. So sometimes to understand attachment, let's talk about loyalty first, and then you can go, why attachment, and building attachment with a customer is a more important thing to do. So loyalty technically connects brands to people's standards, their principles, or maybe if you're lucky, their values. So here's what we would do in marketing research for many, many years. We would try to figure out through some sort of a survey or talking to customers, like, well, what are the principles? What are your values? And so, or what are the standards you're looking for? And then what you want to do is you want to connect your brand to those standards, those principles. This person this person values honesty, or this person's principled in honesty. Okay, so as a brand, you would think to yourself, great. So I need to establish myself as also being focused on honesty. Therefore, I'm going to be transparent, and I'm going to talk about where I'm sourcing my product, whatever. The problem is that word values, and actually even principles as well. We know through behavioral science that our values change given context, given how we're feeling in that moment or during that day. There's a great book out there, guys, called The Honest Truth About Dishonesty. And it's from Dan Ariely. Remember that book?
Yeah.
2012. And let's say if you value honesty, you're out there and you're like, that's one of my core values. You should read that book, because that book will make you feel very, very, you'll question that value, because what it does is it proves it again and again that we lie to ourselves and we lie to other people, and not in always a mean way. In fact, most of the time we lie, it's not in a mean way at all. It's for self-justification, things like that. So, and it shows in this book how oftentimes we lie and we don't even know it. So you think you have values around honesty, but the problem is that we're not always in that value. Our values change based upon who we're talking to, what context we're in, et cetera. So when you try to attach your brand to something that moves around, something like a value, we all have values, but they just change based on how we're feeling and what's important at that moment. then you're actually attaching your brand to something that's a little bit more superficial because you're trying to tap into just one element of a person. I think that's where attachment comes in, because attachment is a deeper form of connection, because it's not going to talk about just one thing of value you may have, whether it's honesty or dependability or whatever. It's going to help you connect to the person as a whole. And this idea I've been toying around with is becoming your clients or your customers' most trusted business ally. And it's this concept of how do we engage with our clients, with our customers, to become an ally of theirs, so they see us as allies. And the only way I can think of doing that, and it's been through these conversations, Steve, it's through treating people, not as customers, as a human. I know. I want you to, don't gag, right? Right? And so this is the experiment in my head I'm thinking about is, if I wanted to create a trusted business ally, how would I do that? I would be their friend, just like I have friends, right? And so I think that's where this attachment idea comes from. It's creating this business ally and this ability for your customers to, kind of go on your behalf and talk about you on your behalf without you even knowing. That's a real connection, and I think that comes through brand attachment.
So I read this book. It's a really good book. Patrick Hanlon is the author. This book's called Primal Branding. And it talks about the 7 pieces of social code that need to exist in a brand. And so while you're talking, I'm thinking about this, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about habit, one of the things that brands, really well-defined brands do, they have certain rituals that the people that are attached to them are familiar with and enjoy. So rituals like maybe when you go into Starbucks, you know the language, but you know the ritual is you're going to walk in, smell the beans. There's the people say hi to the people sitting there on the Wi-Fi, and go and do your order. Or like if you go into an Apple store, the ritual of going and touching everything that's on there. Those rituals are habits that we do that make us feel safe and familiar.
Yep. I know. I love it. And that's safe and familiar. That's how you feel if you are with a friend. You know, you can count on that friend for certain things. Mm-hmm. And your best friend, you count on a lot of things. Why? Because you know them more than just one part of their life. You know them, your best friend, you know them as different parts. Father, son, business owner, friend, all these different roles that we talk about every so often. So I started thinking to myself, if I'm a brand, then I would start, and I wanted to become a trusted business ally, which is very important, I think, because a trusted business ally is not the guy I go to for just my consulting. A trusted business ally is someone I go to for advice. And that could be personal advice or business advice. Like if you curate that kind of connection with your top customers, they'll never leave you, pandemic or not. They won't leave you because they'll come to you even more often because they trust you in a way that is innately deeper than building some sort of a superficial category loyalty. You're the best tasting, cereal that I have. It's just not there anymore. And so I started thinking to myself, how is that built out for me and my company about building attachment? And I think I've been doing this, not with all my customers, unfortunately, maybe that's the issue, but with certain customers. And I thought about one customer that I think I've built attachment to. And then I started thinking about a business coach of mine who has built attachment with me. And I was thinking about that was those relationships. And those are, for the person who built the attachment, have been very profitable and very meaningful, actually.
Yeah. So let's think about that, because I think some of the things that trip us up as marketers are focusing too much on technology, focusing too much on data, and that we're seeing that mannequin, that Dillard's mannequin, instead of a human on the other end of things. And so how can a brand become more human?
Yep. It's funny. I equate it again to how do you engage with your friend? And I wrote here, I said, when's the last time you just asked, how are you? Like, not asking for a deal, not asking for a sale, not following up on a project, proposal if you're a consultant, and just reached out to somebody because you care about them. And there are people that I've heard in the last couple of weeks who COVID has impacted, some of my clients that COVID has impacted. And I wrote 2 emails with just that idea of like, how are you doing? That was all I asked for. And I'm not looking for anything more than that because it came to mind. So first off, like treat your best clients as how you'd want to be treated, right? Ask how they are, not how business is going, not how my project is doing. It's just a first level of really trying to connect with that person at a human level versus a financial level.
It seems like, okay, I'm a member of a company, or I'm forward facing to the clients. I have to like take a little risk of, is it okay to be human with our clients? Is it professional? Mm-hmm. What are the obstacles that an organization may have in the way that prevents them from being more human?
Yeah. I'll tell you, I think that in the past, I was much more worried about that. Now, I've always been pretty open about talking about my family, but I certainly wouldn't tell people about how the business is going or anything else, my clients. But in the world now that we live in, where we're starting every meeting, and it's still happening to this day, we start every meeting with a, how's it going? How are you doing? Like, and for the guys who are watching who don't know this, Steve and I do this as well. Like, we get on a couple of minutes beforehand and we're talking about ourselves, our business. We've had some pretty profound conversations, Steve, honestly, which makes you a trusted business ally of mine, right? So obstacles, I think, have come down a lot because we're now taking calls in our rooms. Like, this is not my typical office. This is my home office. Like, I had office space that I gave up. I've been in conversations now with a senior vice president, had a poster in the background of a Henry Rollins band, Black Flag. And if you don't know Henry Rollins, like hardcore punk, heavy metal back in like mid 80s. And it was a concert poster. I thought, he went to that concert. That's a cool, like the bill for him to even show that. I don't think it was a mistake. I don't think it was, if you're really thinking about it, he probably would have pulled that down and put up something business or corporate. But I think people are showcasing they have a personality outside of business. So first off, I think the barriers are a lot lower. But I also think as a brand, I'm a brand just like you are, is making it open. Like, I have pictures of my family behind me. Why? Because I love my family, but I want you to know I have a family. I want you to know that I'm more than just this consultant to you. So you have to be open to talk about your family, your life, as much or until they feel more comfortable talking about their family and their life.
Wow, I love that. I was just thinking that, more and more you're doing business calls in your house shoes, right?
Yeah.
And so actually it's taking you from an industrialized environment back into your home environment. I love that point, Will. And I bet you a lot of brands are starting to connect more psychologically or emotionally than they are transactionally because the change of their environment and the change of where they're operating from.
Yeah. How many calls are you having now where the dog barks in the background, or, the boy or the young boy, Nicholas does it to me all the time, comes in, Dad, can I talk to you? And I'm in the middle of a call. I'm like, I'll talk to you in just a minute. You used to hide that. Now it's kind of like, of course you're going to tell your kid, hold on just a minute. Daddy's on a call. And that scene is, we all smile, like you smile, like we all smile because we all know now we're all of a sudden seeing each other as, oh yeah, you're not the senior vice president of this division. You're also a dad who's coaching, and you got to get the call because your son is asking you to throw baseball. And I thank God that's one of the best things about COVID, honestly, is that we're starting to see each other as human beings. And because of that, you're starting to notice things like the deadlines that you have to get this done by Friday. Now all of a sudden, like, you can delay that. That can get done by Wednesday because people know that life is a lot more complex, and it's not all about making your deadline. It's about being more human.
Wow, I love this. And we're accidentally being forced to reveal our humanity more and actually starting to connect more with folks, even though we can't shake their hands or meet them at the pub or wherever.
That's right. And another thing, second thing I was thinking about was So you should be asking your clients, and I think you could do this on mass advertising too. You can do just mass advertising if you needed to, just checking in, not selling anything. You can. I mean, I know it's a really risky thing to do, but it helps create a connection. I will say that. But the second thing is, when's the last time you've offered something above and beyond your sales proposition or what you're selling? Like, so Steve, you've actually come to me and said, hey, I think you two should connect just by knowing your client or your friend better. You're like, man, Will should connect with this person because you guys would really hit it off. There's no real huge benefit to you except for, that the ecosystem of people you care about coming together. And if I succeed because of this connection, well, of course I'm going to remember you and say, man, Steve really hooked me up and introduced me. And then because of this introduction, I was able to, make a connection or help my business in some way. So you got to think outside of your offer. And it's so contrary to things that I learned about in corporate America, because corporate America is you want to be very succinct, one offer, very in tune with one market, one target, one line of messaging, and hammer it again and again and again. And I think in today's world, if you're going to build this kind of alliance and become a trusted business ally, you got to stand for more than just your product or even your narrative and your story. I think you have to give, where otherwise it doesn't benefit you in any way. But it'll come back, right? It'll come back. It's just doing the right thing. Again, treating your friend. If you knew your friend would, needs to meet this other person because they get along, of course you make those introductions. That's why we set people up in Texas and they end up getting married. They get married years later because of our setups. That's the same idea. Set your brands up with other brands if you have to, just to get them to a better place.
I'm just thinking while you were talking, I don't know how many times on scheduled sales calls, I actually ended up helping them get their Zoom set up better, adjust their microphone.
Lighting, yeah. God, boy, you look terrible. The lighting, the mic.
But I did, I'm just thinking about how many times it's actually been one-to-one to someone just wanting to help the other person out a little bit because we're finding ourselves in a new environment. And how nice to have someone to give you a little tip or look out for you. That goes a long ways.
Yep, I agree. And then, there's another thing. Have you ever heard, I forgot the principle. It might be called the Ben Franklin effect. Have you ever heard of the Ben Franklin effect?
Doesn't mean.
You may have. I don't know if the name is even right. So I learned it on Billions. I watch Billions on Showtime.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating show. But I learned it on there and I kind of looked it up and I don't know how legit it is, but this idea that supposedly there's a saying from Ben Franklin and it was something to the effect of, if you want to get somebody to do something or to become your friend, I guess is really what it was. If you want to get somebody to become your friend and they're your enemy, so this is your enemy, ask them to do something for you. And that is so contrary. Like, ask them to do something for you. So if this is somebody who has no relationship with you, the best way to create a relationship is not to just necessarily give them something, but ask something of them. And I think in a friendship, we do that as well. I think it may actually help your business if you went to your clients and asked them for help in some way. Can you connect me with somebody? And I think that it sounds self-serving maybe, or it sounds like, well, my clients are too busy to do that. I don't know if that's so true because there's a reciprocity effect, at least in there a little bit, but at least on this Ben Franklin effect, if it's even true, but it does make some intuitive sense that when you ask somebody to do something for you, you feel kind of special, that you're coming to me. And in fact, I think that it's almost like that foot in the door routine. Like if you ask for something, especially if it's small, right? You don't want to overdo it, but you ask for, hey, can you make me a quick introduction? Would you mind writing me up a quick note for my website? I think people feel kind of special that you would ask them to do that. And when you make people feel special, you become closer, you become more attached to them. So that was another thing I thought we should be, as business owners, maybe asking our clients for something. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's just nothing wrong with that at all.
That story comes from, I looked it up.
Did you?
And I remember reading about it. But so Ben Franklin was having a problem with one of his political opponents. And he was he needed them to advocate for some initiative, I believe. And so he was thinking about it, and he was a prolific reader. So in this case, I believe he went and asked if he could borrow a book from his opponent's library.
Uh-huh.
And he didn't even read the book, I don't believe. Okay. But that connected them and got them across a barrier.
I love that. I love that. Just that connection of, it sounds probably a bit, contrary to what you should do, but there is something to that idea. There's something to that idea. And ultimately, like I said, I think that loyalty is superficial because loyalty assumes that you're one dimensional. Like, oh, well, our customers are trustworthy, or they value trustworthy. Therefore, I'm going to stand for trustworthiness. And if you read that book, Honest Truth About Dishonesty, we're not always trustworthy. We're not always quality driven. We're not always anything. We're lots of different things. So the more you know me as a person, the better. So what's interesting about, remember I told you I have somebody who has become my trusted business ally, and I have become somebody's trusted business ally. And I was reflecting on that a little bit. So I'll talk about how I became a trusted business ally for one of my clients. And it wasn't because I meant to do this, but it's just because we built a relationship. And here's how it worked out. This person, really big in the financial services space, he reached out to me as an author. So he didn't know I had a company. He didn't know I had a business. He read my book, Marketing Mindstates, and he reached out to me as an author to say how much he enjoyed the book. And then he told me, I did this. I used your book to understand this one particular customer. How do you think I did? So I then wrote him back and I said, thank you so much. My kid's college fund appreciates your sale. And then I said, you know what? Looking at what you did, I think you did pretty well. I think that's what I would have done too. So I didn't try to sell him anything because he didn't know I had a business. I said, congratulations. He then reaches back out. Thank you so much. You really helped him out my company. How do I take this book to the next level? So he came to me, again, didn't know he was asking me, do I have other companies that I knew of that could help him take to the next level? That's when I said, we should probably talk because I have 2 companies that can help you take it to the next level. We got on the phone. Our first interaction, after he told me what he did, he followed all the steps in the book, Steve. And he said, do you think I should do some marketing research? And I said, no, I don't think you should. I think you got it. I think you could get a little bit farther along, but I don't think you need to. Just because he was so nice. Like he had already reached out to me as an author, thanked me for my thinking, asked me for advice. I gave it to him. Then when he basically gave me the roadway to say, hey, you can make money off me. I work at a huge company and I'm looking for research help. It didn't feel natural. It didn't feel right. I was like, right. You don't need my help.
Yeah.
Then he came back to me. Well, could you look at our marketing? No, he doesn't know how to do that. I can do that. That's called a marketing audit. So what happened was we went through a series of small interactions where I wasn't trying to sell him anything and he's not trying to get the lowest cost for me. We were just trying to get him to a better place. And I liked the guy. And then we started talking about our families. Well, his family's from New Orleans. Well, my wife's family's from down there too, right? So we started talking a little bit about that. We started talking about good crawfish recipes. And next thing I know, we're talking about his family and where he grew up. And over the course of a year, I look back now, he has taken my book. He has now given me the opportunity to present out my book out to 100 different marketers. They've got multiple divisions now using the book. And he finally had their CMO call me up and said, we want to put you on stage in New York. This is it got canceled, unfortunately, but we wanted you to go to New York because we're going to have this meeting with top CEOs. And we want you on stage with our CEO to talk about the concepts of marketing mindstates. I could never have tried to come up with proposals. Like, I think you should do this, but it was just this, he was my friend and he was helping me, I'm helping him, and we're getting to a great place. He advocates on my behalf without me ever being in the room. I don't live in Iowa. We don't even see each other at all because our project is finished, but he still advocates on my behalf. I was thinking that is so much more than loyalty, because I assume with loyalty, if he ever needs behavioral science research, he'll come to me. He advocates on my behalf to where he's creating opportunities for me without me ever being in there. Why? Because he likes me, because we like each other. We want to see the best in each other. And I thought to myself, that was not deliberate, but I just treated him like I want to be treated. We're just friends, and we give each other, value, and we talk about life. And it was such a different relationship that I'll benefit for the next couple of years for, I'm sure, minimum.
it's weird because I worked for other companies before I started ROI Online. And I would always feel awkward when I felt that there was a particular way I should go about it, but it wasn't really and I always felt insecure about it, or I got in trouble, or it's like I couldn't defend why I didn't go for the sale and I just did this, right? And when I started my company, I was able to start doing that, but it took me a while to get past that past struggle or shame or whatever I was feeling. But I wanted to be more human and less just transactional. But then you have all these competing voices. Well, if you're going to be profitable, then you need to raise your prices. And there's all these counter things. But I believe you can never go wrong just being human with the folks that, whether they're your clients or not. What does it hurt to give some good advice? So what if they go to someone else? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, because I'm so with you. There's such a great benefit too when you're in this human space. And I know we're being fluffy maybe, but maybe that's what we should be this time of year, right?
Right.
So I don't know if you know this. So a couple of years ago, I was approached for an acquisition. And I'd never gone through anything like this before. And it was a long process. But I remember that I talked to my lawyer, and my lawyer goes to my church as well. So we sat down, and he's known me for a couple of years, and he's known me at church here and there. I see him every so often. So when everything hit the fan, when the contract is on the desk, right? So we're weeks away from signing something that was going to, we're going to be acquired by a larger company, everything else. He said to me, Will, you like Trigger Point, my company? He goes, Will, you like Trigger Point, right? I go, yeah, I like Trigger Point. And he said, and you're making money, right? I go, yeah, I'm making money. He goes, so tell me again why you want to sell. And it threw me back because he had been with this transaction the whole time. Like he had been working with me. But when he looked at the contract, because all these negotiations don't matter until you see the paper. And on the paper, he goes, well, let me tell you what I see on paper. And he basically said, he told me all the lifestyle changes were going to happen, the massive amount of travel, the massive pressure, 40 employees. And he goes, I don't think that's the guy you wanted to be. And he didn't say the biz, he said the guy. And I'll never forget that because I ended up 4 days later telling the company no thanks. And it was a heartbreak for sure in many ways, but he saved me from myself. Why? Because I wasn't a business that he was trying to make money. He would have made so much more money on the transaction, Steve, but he knew me as a person. And he knew that I would be unhappy. And, you don't want to have that on your head when you're like, I know that this guy is worse off because of me, because I didn't give him that advice. And that guy he's my lawyer. And, people always say they hate their lawyers. Not me. I love my lawyer. My lawyer has protected me, not as a business, but as a family man. And we're not best friends. Like he's my lawyer that I saw in church every couple of weeks. Like, hey, and that's it. But it was that he took the extra moment to say, is this what you really want? And after about an hour with him, it wasn't what I wanted, but I never knew that in the moment until he took the time to see me as a human.
Wow. The folks that listen to this, they're marketing directors or the folks that are really working on their marketing. And the thing that's wrong with marketing is if you're designing the marketing and not seeing the humans on the other side, then it's going to be a disconnect. And you just gave a great example of him seeing you not as a client in a transaction, but as a human that was going to experience something after this transaction. That's huge.
And I advocate on his behalf all the time. I once a month, I get somebody who says, do you have a good lawyer? I go, yeah, I have a great lawyer. How many lawyers can say that? I don't know. I can say about my lawyer. I'm not sure how many there that they can. But you're right. And I think any brand can do these things. I mean, I'm giving you kind of very brass tacks things in my life, but there is no reason why mass brands can't treat people as humans. Maybe one of the things you should be thinking about is not showing the most beautiful, unrealistic images, in all of your advertising. I think there is something to aspirations. I totally get aspirations, but sometimes you also got to treat people as the human beings who don't look beautiful in their kitchen when they're making breakfast for their kids. And so don't idolize that situation. Show the reality of the situation and understand that they will understand that you have empathy. You know that what that situation looks like, and then they'll feel greater connection and associate this attachment idea with you.
A lot of these conversations start on the marketing doorstep, but we color outside of the lines into what makes a brand more connecting to the folks. I mean, the ultimate thing is to become a brand that people are loyal to in this conversation. But we're using the words marketing, but marketing is actions that can help you build out a brand.
Yeah.
And in my book, I just say, what is a branding? Branding is how people feel after they interact with your company. That's your branding. And this actual conversation has helped me really think about the marketing activities that can help you become a better brand.
And I love how you said interaction, Steve. I think that's important because I even forget about that. I think about how many emails are we going to send out, or what's the webinar going to look like. When you said interaction, I think a part of your interaction is you pick up the phone and you call your client and just say, "How are you? I was thinking about you. How are you?" And if it's a 2-minute conversation, cool, hang up. Don't try to upsell anything. That's an interaction that could be just as meaningful as the next cool offer you have and the discount of 15% if they sign up now.
Yeah. So if you haven't read Will's book, Marketing the Mind States, you need to get that book and dive in. Will's worked with a lot of brands, but the essence of the book, if you're not familiar, is that people are in states of mind when they're evaluating your solution or your product. And we're not this static avatar that looks like a Dillard's mannequin.
Yeah.
The same every day, unless you go and change the clothes on that. And often, those mannequins, they're androgynous. You could put girls' clothes on, it wouldn't matter. And yet, that's how most marketing is designed. And yet, Will's book gives you a little bonk on the forehead and say, no, people are in a state of mind. When they're considering it. What is that state of mind? Design your materials to really complement or expedite where they are and what they need.
Very well summarized. I should write that down and put it in the back for sure one day. No, it's great. So yeah, that's it. I think it's understanding that people are human. So if you're going to be a good marketer, if you're going to be a good business owner, you need to understand the human side of people. And there's a lot of behavioral psychology in it. And that's what I study. And that's what we talk about every week.
All right. Well, who am I? I'm Steve Brown, ROI Online. I'm also the author of the funniest book on marketing you'll ever read, The Golden Toilet. Stop flushing your marketing budget into your website and build a system that grows your business. But I get the privilege of having a weekly conversation on the topic I love to talk about with Will Leach, and that's marketing and the mind states that people are in. Will, this has been an awesome episode.
Good. Well, I'm glad we had a chance to do it. Like I said, these things just come up every so often. So though it wasn't real scripted this time, let's be more human and let's think about branding, creating brand attachment, which goes way deeper than loyalty. But if you have attachment, you have advocates, and advocates can go a long way in this new world.
All right. Mindstate Marketing Hour with Will Leach. He's author of Marketing the Mind States. And I like to say how to use science to connect with your clients. Well, we'll see you next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. See you next week, everybody.